I am going to show you how to make an Alexa Bliss Lily Doll Keyring. I have got another video on YouTube on how to make the life-size doll. This Lily doll is the perfect size for a gift and you can carry her with you. I've made a PDF and I will put the link below for that. First thing, once we've printed it off, is we need to cut it out. Now, there's no seam allowance as we are doing all the sewing externally to the doll due to the size and the materials we're going to use. There is going to be a list in the comments and I will be linking to UK suppliers. For those of you not in the UK, these are materials that are widely available most craft stores. Alternatively, Amazon or eBay should have everything you need for this project, including any optional extras. If you wish to reuse the pattern, I recommend doing what I do with large patterns, which is covering it in sticky back plastic, and do make 2 copies of the body part. I'm going to apologise now for the quality of the pattern. This is my first digitised pattern. Once you have cut around the pattern, we then need to cut out the fabrics. For the dress, I'm using a PVC coated black material. Great thing about this is you can use offcuts, and since we're actually doing stitches externally, you can actually use a slightly thicker fabric than if we were going to sew it and then reverse the material once it was sewn. The PDF is very much a guide. Do not worry if you're not 100% precise. I cut the dress keeping the sleeves on the fold. When working with things this size, I tend not to pin, but if you wish to pin, you could use quilting clips. Onto the doll. I suggest having 2 of the body because it actually gives you 2 options as to the way of sewing the body. You can have, I was going to say, it's like with the larger doll, you can have the entire body in white and then add the purple for the chest, or the way I'm doing it means that the trunk of the body is purple and then the extremities, the arms, the legs, the head are white. So we need to cut the pattern so we then have the individual pattern pieces. I'm actually using felt. You could use fleece. The great thing about using felt is you can use any scissors. You don't need any particular equipment, and you can buy it in packs of A4, which has got different colours in, and you can also buy it by the metre. It all depends on your plans for the remainder of the fabric. Again, here I've used offcuts from other projects. And just don't forget, you do actually need 2 of all the pieces. This is a 2-day project, so we've started with everything we've done so far, and this is where we need to get some painting done. We are going to start with the dress, the face and the buttons. I also used this opportunity to tidy up any bits that were a little bit square on the pattern, so you can see that I've just cut them and rounded them slightly. I have black buttons and grey buttons, but my red button's actually a little bit pink, so I'm actually going to paint it. This way I can actually use what I have. By positioning the buttons for the eyes, we can draw on the eyebrows and the nose and finally the mouth. Here I'm using fabric pens, and you will need a black, a red and a blue. Because I can't get skull beads to fit, I'm using just plain beads. You will need a beading needle that goes through them. And I'm actually brushing over the mouth to smooth out any rough patches. When I've coloured the eyes, I do exactly the same with the brush. It's just a normal paintbrush, there's nothing fancy or special about it. Although these are markers and they don't actually need to dry, because of the things and the paint that needs to dry, it's better to do all these today at the same time. Onto the eyes, we leave the rim around the edge and we fill them in with white. If you accidentally fill in the hole with paint, you can just remake it with a sewing needle. Between the holes, we're actually going to fill in with red, so it's a little red cross. The paint I'm using is acrylic paint, it's nothing fancy. And then I have to cover my pink button to make it red. You can do this with any button if you have the right size but the wrong colour, so you might need to do it grey or red. if you don't need to do that, then obviously you can skip this step. Our last bit of painting is using the fabric paint in white and pink. This requires the thinnest or finest brush you have. This is to add the symbol to the dress. It's a mismatched circle, the pigtails, crosses for eyes, a smile, and then dip dyed pink at the end of the pigtails. I've layered it up to get a brighter pink. The final preparation today is the hair. I've used clip-in hair extensions. Mine are pink and orange. You take how much you need in your hand, and then we're going to put the thread about halfway down, wrap it round, tie it off, go around it a few more times, tie it again. To ensure it all stays together, we're actually going to sew through the hair on either side and again tie it off. Now, thread it, cut it away from the clip and place the bound section on wadding. So we're going to cut it off at the clip so we don't have a clip on the end. From a single clip, you are likely to get at least 2 keyrings. With the hair over the wadding, add a few drops of super glue on the sewn knot, turning it to thoroughly soak this section. This will secure the hair together so it doesn't molt and fall out unless it's being pulled. You're still likely to lose some hair if it's tugged or pulled out, but this way you shouldn't just lose it. It shouldn't just shed in your pocket or in your bag. Now we need to leave these things to dry overnight. Welcome to day 2. Or obviously continuing on the same video. The only thing I haven't done is the only thing I've done off camera, is to cut out my wadding. Depending on the wadding you have, depends on how many layers you require. I've got 2 layers of this wadding. I've overcut the indents to allow manipulation while I'm sewing. Just be careful, obviously, not to cut off the appendages. And the hair is going to go between the 2 layers, so having 2 layers is actually a really, really good idea. And this helps to prevent the super glue being a solid lump. I've set up 3 needles here. The first is for sewing around the outside, the second is for attaching the buttons, and the last is actually a beading needle. This has a very small eye and allows the beads to pass over the eye of the needle. These beads are from a kit. Most hobby stores will sell beads this size. I recommend going in and having a look and finding the ones that are the ones you like. If anybody does manage to find any skulls that are small enough for this purpose, please do drop a link below in the comments. We start by putting the buttons on the dress, and don't forget that the red button's going to go on the left shoulder and the grey of course then goes on the right. Don't sew the sides up as they actually are going to get sewn up while on the body. Sewing the eyes onto the head, you get to play around with this. You can have one of the eyes higher, and obviously that makes the other one lower. You can really create your doll here. Do make sure that your buttons are secure, as you don't want them catching on something and just falling off the doll. I've started on the corner of the neck. You sew through the felt, which secures the wadding inside. You carry on until you reach where you want the hair. You don't want to pull the stitches too tight, as we do actually want them to sit visibly gently on top, but you obviously don't want the whole thing pulling apart as well. So this is something you will need to discover for yourself and practice a little bit. So here I've put a loop of very fine ribbon around the hair with a really tight knot sitting underneath, and I've attached a ribbon clip so I don't lose it inside whilst I'm actually sewing. So we put the hair into the head. Now you could use a loom band here to wrap around to give the bobble of the ponytail, but what I've done is I've actually taken my thread and I've wrapped it around to create the bobble, and then I sew over where the hair is and then put another stitch before the hair before I then carry on sewing around the head. From here you simply sew into the middle of the head where we want the loop to sit. Okay, you're going to take your ribbon and you're going to position it in the middle. You need to make a stitch through not only the fabric but through the ribbon as well. You need to do this a couple of times if possible. This will prevent you losing the loop into the head. There are other alternatives like rings through the dress or putting the ribbon elsewhere if this is not an option that's the best one for you. From here we sew down to where we want the next ponytail, and then obviously we repeat the first ponytail by wrapping the thread around the ponytail and sewing through it to secure it in place. If you don't want to use or don't have access to these clip-in hair, you can use thread, but it does give a very different look and feel. I've got one here that I've used cotton and I'll show you again later on. And now I take the body, the front and the back, and I'm going to sew across the neck. If you're putting the purple on top of white, here is where you would do it, and again you sew it on top and you sew across the neck, going from one side of the body to the other. From here we're going to sew the arm on, but not as tightly as we did the neck, because what we're going to do is sew from the shoulder down to the armpit and then back up. This way it puts us in the position we want to be to continue sewing. These stitches aren't seen, but they are there to secure the arm to. From the shoulder we go down and around the arm as we did going around the head. Once you reach the underarm again, we're going to go down the rest of the body until we reach the base of the body or the top of the leg. We now need to do what we did for the arm, but for the first leg we go across and then come back. Don't forget you can trim things as you need to. I needed to trim my wadding down here, which it's just what happens. Sometimes you have to trim things. If you're finding that the hair gets in the way, you can use a bobble or a clip just to secure it out of the way. Using a clip obviously made it a bit heavier and it was a lot more easy to manipulate, and it stopped the individual threads getting into the sewing in the way. Do keep check that you are grabbing the fabric both front and back. Make sure that obviously if you're going through the purple on the front, you come in through the purple on the back, and the same goes for the white fabric as well. Carry on down the leg until you reach the bottom. From here you're going to add toes, as toes can be seen on the main doll. We add the toes on the surface of the front only by using a long stitch up, going across, and then we make a parallel stitch down, giving her the toes. If you're getting loops as you're going around the doll, or if it's snagging on the bottom, just gently undo them as you go, because the last thing you want to be doing is trying to sort this out at the end. when you finish the leg, you repeat the second one, you go across and, obviously down and around, and continue the toe as you did for the first one. With the second arm, obviously we're going armpit to shoulder and then shoulder down to armpit, as opposed to doing it, shoulder, armpit, armpit, shoulder, and then you carry on by going around again. Now it's time to put Lily in a dress and feed the thread from the shoulder down to the armpit where it can join the dress, and sew down the first hem. Once you've secured the one side of the dress, rethread at the armpit, sew down the outside and to the hem. You could try decorative stitches here. I haven't. I've just maintained a very simple stitch, but this is your doll, so. One final thing here to do now is the teeth. You sort out 13 beads, tie a knot in your thread, and what I've done is I've fed it through the side of the face and then out the mouth. At the corner of the mouth, and I've positioned and sewn on 13 beads. Just be careful not to do what I did and spill the beads everywhere. It's a good job I work over a flexible silicone mat. Once secured, Lily is nearly finished. All you have left to do is cut the hair to your desired length or leave it long, it's up to you. And now you have a keyring Lily doll.